Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, today we're diving straight into an incredibly frustrating medical mystery, one that's literally affecting millions of people worldwide. We're going to put a major, heavily debated theory about long COVID to the test, using some truly groundbreaking research out of the University of Turku in Finland. So let's see if we can finally crack this case.
For years now, long COVID patients have felt completely dismissed. Their lives have essentially been put on hold. Meanwhile, the medical community has heavily suspected one specific biological culprit, right? A persistently inflamed brain. It was the prevailing theory to explain why folks just weren't bouncing back. But we've got to ask the tough question, is widespread brain inflammation actually the real cause?
Before we even get into the hard science, we absolutely have to validate what these patients are experiencing. Because these debilitating long COVID symptoms, they are very, very real. We're talking about crushing, severe fatigue, cognitive impairment, what most of us just call brain fog, and alongside that, crippling anxiety and depression. Pinning down the exact biological mechanism driving all of this is absolutely crucial.
Section 1. The Interrogation, Testing the Theory. A groundbreaking study from the University of Turku, Finland.
To finally get some solid answers, Professor Laura Aras and her team set up an absolutely brilliant methodology. Think about how they structured their participant groups. They brought in 14 long COVID patients dealing with persistent, severe symptoms alongside 11 healthy controls. But here is the genius move. They also included 13 patients with multiple sclerosis, or MS. By bringing in those MS patients, the researchers created this perfect, undeniable benchmark for what real, widespread brain inflammation actually looks like on a scan.
And the team didn't just rely on one basic metric either. They used a rigorous three-step process to hunt down any microscopic evidence of damage or swelling in the nervous system. Step 1, PET imaging, which is incredibly sensitive for detecting neuroinflammation. Step 2, MRI scans to map out the brain's physical structure and its white matter. And Step 3, analyzing blood samples for specific biomarkers that flag neuronal damage, literally leaving no stone unturned.
Section 2. The twist. The surprising brain scans. Expectations versus reality.
Now, prepare yourself, because when they compared the brain white matter inflammatory activity, the results completely upended the prevailing assumptions. As you'd expect, the MS patients showed high levels of persistent inflammatory activity. But the long COVID patients? They actually showed significantly lower inflammatory activity. In fact, their scans were practically a match for the healthy, symptom-free brains. They completely lacked that fiery, generalized inflammation seen in the MS brains.
So the huge takeaway here is crystal clear. There is absolutely no evidence of widespread brain inflammation in patients with long COVID when compared to healthy controls. Generalized, widespread brain inflammation is officially off the hook as the primary long-term culprit. But if widespread inflammation isn't causing this devastating fatigue and anxiety, our scientific detectives had to ask, well, what exactly is happening inside these patients' heads?
Section 3. The real culprit. Localized cellular activity in specific brain regions.
The investigation led the researchers deep within the brain to two very specific regions, the hippocampus and the amygdala. If you know your anatomy, you know these areas are primarily responsible for our memory, our emotional regulation, and our stress responses. And it was right here, in these highly specialized emotion-regulating centers, that the team spotted something highly suspicious.
See, instead of a brain-wide fire, researchers discovered altered, localized cellular activity right in these specific stress centers. And importantly, this heightened cellular activity in the hippocampus and amygdala directly correlated with patients who were experiencing the highest levels of depression, anxiety, and a generally lower quality of life. The problem wasn't everywhere. It was actually incredibly targeted.
Section 4. The timeline factor. The fading footprint of inflammation.
Now, the researchers also pointed out a fascinating nuance when it comes to time, proving that the age of the infection totally changes the crime scene. It's not that inflammation is entirely absent from the COVID story, it's just dynamic. At day 0, during a severe acute infection, past studies show clear signs of brain inflammation. Then, from month 1 to roughly month 16, higher white matter inflammatory activity is still somewhat hanging around. But think about month 16 and beyond. That inflammatory footprint fades and diminishes over time. So inflammation is there early on, but it acts like a fading footprint, eventually leaving behind a much more complex, highly localized disease profile in the long run.
Section 5. A new treatment path, evolving how we help long COVID patients.
Because the biological mechanism is completely different than what the medical world originally assumed, the way we treat it absolutely has to evolve. Under the old assumption, doctors might rely solely on therapies aimed at knocking out general inflammation. But this new direction, it suggests focusing on treatments that specifically target stress and emotional regulation. This is a real game changer. Doctors can basically stop throwing general anti-inflammatories at the problem and start exploring therapies explicitly tailored to the brain's unique stress and emotion pathways.
Professor Aris perfectly sums up why this is so important. She says this study highlights the need to continue investigating the complex biological mechanisms underlying long COVID. Understanding these processes is essential for developing targeted treatments, and she hit the nail on the head. Identifying the exact biological mechanism isn't just about solving some academic puzzle. It's literally the only way to invent personalized medicine that actually works for patients who are suffering every single day.
Which leaves us with one massive, lingering question. Could targeting our brain's stress and emotion centers finally unlock the cure for long COVID? As we look toward a future of refined post-viral care, you really have to wonder if calming the brain's emotional regulators will be the ultimate key to giving millions of people their lives back. It fundamentally shifts our entire perspective on the disease, and honestly, that is why this research is so incredibly exciting. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep analyzing the data and stay curious.